you hear me?
Oh,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You have some more volume?
Brittany?
Oh, it's all the way up. Test, test, test.
That's too loud.
That's too much. Too much. How about that? Can you hear me? No? You can't hear me back there? Can you hear me back? Hello, 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 hello. Not too much back? Echo? You okay? Good? Now that you're all quiet, you're dismissed. No. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads for the invocation. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you today for the beauty at Holly Lake Ranch. The trees are green, the water is clear, and we really like that a lot. Also, Lord, we know there's some sick people at Holly Lake Ranch. We ask that you put your healing hand on them, help their doctors and their families get through some things that are very, very tough. And finally, Lord, we want to say special thank you, and please protect our security detail as they're out every day trying to help us become a safe place. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Warren. It's good to see everyone. It's a good turnout for such a nice day. We're glad you're here. Good to see you. We'll get to the actual agenda here. Item number 3 needs to be deleted because the meeting was canceled on that date of March the 14th. Therefore, there's no minutes to be approved. Moving to item 4, do I have a motion?
Consider and approve meeting minutes for the April 18, 2023 open meeting and executive session.
Okay, I will second that, Danny.
I have a motion and a second. Those approved say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item 5, Jeff?
All right, good evening, everybody. Going to move right into this as quickly as we can. We're going to start with our revenue here. Again, all these numbers you're going to be seeing here tonight, these are our first quarter numbers, January 1 through March 31st. Maintenance fees are right on button, just a hair over, which is good. Golf is tremendous through the first quarter. $3,800 up. That is almost all of that is green fee. A little bit of it is cart rental. Memberships are pretty flat for what we budgeted. I can tell you this. I think I've mentioned this before. My predecessor did not keep records of rounds played for whatever reason. So, by the way, tonight is my 7th anniversary today. So when I started here back in 2016, I started keeping records right off the bat. Since I've been here, we had the most rounds played in the month of January. We had the most rounds played in the month of February, and we had the most rounds played in the month of March. So it has been an active early season for us. Obviously, restaurant, we got nothing going on there. Other income, let's talk about that real quick. So $31,000, almost $32,000 over budget. This is kind of fake money, I guess is the best way to put it. $22,000 of that are collection fees. As you know, this board and the prior board has been very committed to try to turn around Section 3. And the only way to do that is to take every one of these properties that are very much in arrears through the legal process. It costs us a lot of money. In order for us to ever have a chance of recovering those fees, we have to charge those fees. When we get charged by our collection contractor, we have to turn around and put these fees onto these accounts. So we're just adding to what these accounts already owe us. Don't know that we're ever going to see it. So that $22,000 over in the collection fees is, it's offset by, when we get to the expenses, you'll see where our expenses are quite high for our collection contractor. So it's offset, but again, I don't know that we'll ever collect these, but we've got to stick to our guns to get through this. That's the only way that we're ever gonna turn around Section 3 to get these properties back. The other money that we're over in other income, $6,000 in late fees, which is not a good sign. $2,800 in interest, that's very good. Moving on to expenses, first department is security. Not gonna go through everything here. Payroll is very close for for probably the first time in quite a while. We were pretty close to being fully staffed throughout the whole first quarter. Deer project, you'll see that we're $2,300 below budget there. Our permit expired March 31st, so that is all done. We might have one small invoice still come in, maybe a couple $100, but for the most part, we're done. The amount you see there, $25,114. What we got for that was 171 deer that we were able to get taken off of the ranch, which will help in future years. Down there toward the bottom, vehicle. We're pretty close to on budget, but there's several things in that vehicle line, one of which is fuel. We're actually under budget in fuel. We're quite a bit over budget in repairs. We had 2 major repairs to 2 different units in security. So one of the things is, you know, we want to make sure that we point this out because if you look up at furniture and equipment, we had some things budgeted for this year for furniture and equipment that were maybe not extreme needs. Maybe they were trying to between needs and wants that we had budgeted. We're putting those off until later in the year to see how the rest of the department does, since we're so far over budget on the repair line. So again, that's just something that we do. I mean, our budget is our best guess. We never know what's going to happen, but when we have unexpected things come up, we try to make pivots in order to make your dollars go as far as possible. Moving on to the maintenance department. We're been about 1 person short for most of the first quarter. That's the reason we're so far under budget on payroll there. Drainage projects, that's just really timing. We thought we were going to get to a project in the first quarter. We haven't been able to get to it yet, so that's one of the reasons why that's significantly under budget. Everything else in the maintenance department is pretty much right on, except for tree removal down there. You'll see we have not done any trees on the ranch proper. That's different here when we turn the page and get to the golf course. We haven't had anything that was critical that we've had to take down, so that's a blessing for a change. Moving on to golf maintenance. Again, we're about 1 person short for most of the first quarter there. There's a reason for that discrepancy. Fertilizers and chemicals were a little bit under budget. Most of that is because our big spring fertilizer we've delayed because the temperatures have been so low. Put that fertilizer out right now, you're not going to get your bang for your buck. So that's more or less a timing. Down there at the bottom, tree removal, $5,200. That's 8 trees that we've already taken down. And folks, again, these are trees that we have to take down. They're in very bad shape. They're either close to property or they're going to be very close to the plain area, endangering human lives. So we take down only what we absolutely have to. A little bit under budget on fuel, so that's good for the first quarter. Moving on to Pro Shop. As always, not a whole lot going on in the Pro Shop. Everything is pretty much pretty close to budget. We had buildings and grounds. We had one thing budgeted for the first quarter that we decided not to do. That's the reason we're so far under budget there. Everything else is pretty much right on line. Moving on to recreation. Obviously, we don't have any payroll yet. That won't happen until we open the pools, which happens this Saturday? Yeah, this Saturday. Let's see, everything else is really pretty good in recreation. A little bit under budget in buildings and grounds. That's a positive. Everything else is pretty much on par. Moving on to restaurant. Buildings and grounds. We're under budget on buildings and grounds. I do want to always like to make sure everybody understands what we do spend that $1,600. Basically, was 2 major things. We had to have our grease trap serviced, number one, and then number two, our yearly maintenance on our fire suppression system that's over the cooking area. And when we had that done, that led to the next line item. We had to have the vent hood cleaned, so that's the equipment repair that you see there. Telephone and utilities, actually utilities across the board are a little bit below budget so far for the restaurant, which is good. Although I've already seen the April bill, and I think it might be just a hair over on a couple of them. Moving on to admin. Payroll. We are $7,700 below budget on salary, $14,000 below budget on wages, so that's a positive. Moving down to credit card processing, we're about $1,800 over budget. I think we just, it was really hard for us to really hone in on what the savings we were going to see from the credit card convenience fees that we've enacted for this year. I think maybe we might have overestimated just a little bit how much we're going to save on that. So that's the reason. I think it's more or less, it's not anything that's unexpected. I think it's just didn't do a great job of budgeting that. That falls on me. Let's see. Everything else on page 1 of admin looks to be pretty good. Page 2 of admin, the professional fees. So remember, this year we've changed our format. We've gone back and we have tried to reallocate things that we can definitely track to each department. We've added to those departments. And then we also created a new department that we came up with a very brilliant name. It's called the Multi-Departmental Expense Department. So we worked very hard on that name. The professional fees that you see under admin consist of only two things: collection fees, our collection contractor, and then our contract labor / other account. All $19,800 are those collection fees. So that's what I'm talking about. It offsets right now, but we have to pay that. Don't know that we're going to collect on that, the stuff that we put onto those people's accounts. Let's see, everything else under admin is good. I want to note that bottom number down there. We're $24,000 below budget. That's 12% below budget for admin, which is exceptional. Moving on to HR. Payroll and taxes, that's our health insurance for all of our employees. It's our payroll subscription, our 401k matching. So we're just a hair under budget. Keep that in check. Everything else there is pretty status quo. Now our brand new multi-departmental department. Down right there, professional fees. Now these professional fees, that's our corporate compliance, it's our audit, our accounting fees, and legal. Of the $18,890 that we spent so far, over $5,800 below budget on corporate compliance. Legal represents $14,600 of that $18,800, and it's on a budget of $15,000, so we're just slightly under budget on legal fees. Capital leases down here toward the bottom. You see we're $5,800 below budget. You're like, how can we be below budget on leases? We know what the leases are going to be. So we had two things happen. One, our big golf maintenance equipment package that we do. That expired at the end of January. We were supposed to get the new equipment in February. Have not received it yet. We knew this was going to be a challenge. We put the order in as soon as the funds were approved last year, and so we're on the waiting list. So the good thing is they don't come and pick up the current equipment they have. They let us keep it, and they're letting us keep it at $0 rent. So basically we're saving several $1,000s each month until they get that new equipment to us. There was also another piece of equipment that we did get on time. They just didn't start billing us on time. So we have a $5,800 savings there because of those two items. So for the bottom line there, We had budgeted through the first quarter to have a $52,000 loss. We're currently at 108 to the positive, so about $160,000 to the good. So that is what we call a nice thing. All right, so before I move on to the collections report, I will open it up to any questions on the financials. If you're up at the front, if you would come to the microphone. If you're toward the back, shout the question to me and I'll repeat it. You were in the middle. You didn't know what to do, did you?
I'll just come up front. Randy Brock, Section 2. Had a question on your first financial display. You income statement.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about fees down below, collection fees. How is that an income?
Yeah, so when we get charged, say we send someone to collections, we send an account, a property owner's account to a collections. The collection contractor will send, first thing they do is they send a letter. They charge us a fee for that. We turn around and charge that fee onto that homeowner's account. So it shows up as under
So you're
other
accruing it.
income.
You haven't actually collected the
Correct.
money. You're accruing it.
Yes, sir,
So
exactly.
it's fake money.
That's why I was saying, that's exactly right, it's fake money. Anything else on income statement? Before we move to the collections report, I did not prepare a board restricted funds report for you. The reason why? It's pretty simple. We haven't completed, of all the projects that were approved for the first quarter, we haven't finished one of them by the end of the quarter. In fact, very few of them we spent hardly any money on yet. Had lots of delays, lots of other issues. The only one that was close to being completed was the fitness center remodel and all the new equipment. Through March 31st, we had spent $32,468. And I do know that Adam and I had a talk about it. We've already had some of the other invoices come in. We are going to come in under budget on that project, so that's good. We had one small thing on the gun range repairs that was completed by March 31st, one small thing on the aquatic plants, and a very small thing on the bridge sandblasting. Everything else is pretty much coming in April or early May. So next quarter, we will have a very detailed board restricted funds report for you. All right, let's move on to collections here. So this is just showing you the comparison since the last time we did the collections report from December until April now. Our 30 days actually went down by almost $3,000. If you look down here, at the top three numbers are the dollar figures. The bottom three are the number of accounts that are represented by those dollar figures. So we went from 58 accounts that were 30 days past due down to 23 accounts, and it dropped down to about $3,000. 60 days almost doubled, both in the number of accounts and the dollar figures. And then the 90 days went up substantially as well, 7 more accounts for 16,000. And again, a lot of this has to do, those numbers going up like that has to do with where we are in the process right now with a lot of those accounts over in Section 3. So these numbers are a bit skewed because of that process right now. Total number of accounts in collections actually went down by 4, and if memory serves correctly, we settled on 3 of them, and the other one went into a payment plan, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that is the long and short of the collections report. Any questions on that? Okay. I think I'm going to turn it over to Adam.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's great to see everybody here. This is, I think, the biggest crowd, so it's great to see that. I just want to hit on the USCG arbitration. So we talked about this back in December, and USCG was essentially the folks that tried to, or that did, negotiate our new trash contract. So they came in as we switched from the old trash contractor to the new trash contractor, and they revised the routes, they did a variety of different things, and we signed a short-term contract with them. They alleged that contract was actually the same contract that we signed with Live Oak, but that's not the case. So essentially what they did is they tried to say that we're missing out on money. They took us through the arbitration process to the tune of about $150,000 that they were seeking. March 16th, I traveled out to New Brunswick, New Jersey with our legal counsel. We completed the arbitration. Final summaries were submitted, so on and so forth. But needless to say, last week, and I put this up there because it was the best outcome that we could have hoped for. But we received on April 27th of 2023 from the arbitrator, the respondent, which is us, HLRA, prevails on the substantive merits of the claim, and thus claim presented by claimant, U.S. Consulting Group, is denied in its entirety. So I'm happy and pleased to officially, thank you, to officially put this thing to bed. It is done, and we can move on now to greener things. So.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Scott. I'm the new director of operations. If I haven't met you, I've probably met a few of you, but obviously for the most part, I haven't met anybody. I'm going to go over the lakes and what we're doing, some of the projects that we have going on. Start out with the aquatic plants. Just some general information. We're going to be planting about 1,825 plants through the fall of 2023. We started on April 22nd, so a couple Saturdays ago. Phase 1 was completed. There is some intent to do some more in the middle of May. I haven't solidified dates yet, but it's going to be either the 17th or the 18th of May. And you'll see her out, probably in the security boat, or some volunteers will be out helping her go along some of the Holly Lake Ranch Association-owned areas and planting those plants. We still have plants available for any residents that live along the lake that want some. They're no cost to you other than, obviously, you're paying dues and things like that, but there's no extra cost for those. And all you need to do is email me. I can get you on the list, and at some point we'll come by and mark the areas that you want, and we'll be able to get you some plants. This project is it's the biologist recommended long-term method to try and help with nutrient issues that we have in the lakes. We've had algae over the last couple years. We're trying to mitigate some of that in a natural way, and that's what these plants are for. It's again a long-term solution to try and help with that. Next. We have a contract from Overton. These are the guys that come out. They do electro survey. They put some electrodes in the water, shock the fish. They float up to the top of the water and they weigh them and measure them and get an idea of what kind of shape the fish population is in. They also do surveys for vegetation algae. They look at what's going on, and then they're on call. If we need something, we have a question, we can call them and talk to Mr. Overton or the biologist that they have there and ask questions. That's part of what that $10,000 goes for. They also planted some fish. I don't know if any of you saw the fish truck. We planted some fish out here in Holly Lake and also over in Greenbrier. And then we have one more planting that's going to occur later. If anybody's interested in looking at the survey, Adam put out this survey on the 21st GM update. It's a link there that you can look at and go and review it. And as of right now, they basically said that the lake is healthy, based on the current situation. The fish population is healthy, and so that's good news. We have some treatment that we're going to be doing here starting this week, actually. We'll probably see a few of us out on the lake throwing some little white bags into the lake. This is beneficial bacteria. We use that to basically try and suck up some of the nutrients that are out there that the algae use to grow with, and this helps mitigate some of that extra nutrients that we have in our lake. We're going to do 2 treatments. They usually are done about 10 days apart, so you'll see us out there this week, and then we'll do another one in a couple weeks after that. In the past, we've done algicide, and there's nothing currently planned for that unless we see, unless we start seeing numbers that we think they're going to get us in trouble, and then we'll look maybe at some of that other stuff if we start to get somewhere where we need to look at those things. Same with the aluminum phosphates. Again, it's just another method to treat with. It's not planned at this time, but it's something that we'll look at if we start to get some numbers that show some concern. Next slide. A few years ago, the Lakes work group bought some test equipment. what we use these for is we use them to look at the nutrients, to see where we're at. This is kind of how we're going to track to see what things are going on, to see if we're getting to levels that are concerning. You'll probably see myself out on the lake doing some of this stuff with probably in the security boat. There might be some few volunteers, but we'll probably be out on the security boat once a week at least doing tests here over the next few months. And we'll be testing for pH, phosphates, nitrates, or phosphorus, nitrates. And then we also have a couple other things in there. We look at the temperature because that's an indicator, when stuff starts to grow as it heats up. And then some of these other ones, conductivity, dissolved oxygen, and then pH again. Both of them do pH to just be something we can look at and check as a backup. One thing that's cool about this, the one in the middle there, that digital monitor, we can use it multiple times with one thing of solution. I can go out to 10 different parts of the lake and check temperature, check all those numbers and record them. The Sechi disc is this thing you see on the right. It's basically kind of a visibility thing. I went out and did it yesterday, and right now there's really good visibility in the lake, which can be good and kind of be bad because the more sun the farther the sun goes down, the more chance you have of algae growing. A really healthy lake has between like 12 and 18 inches of visibility. So if you can see way far down, it's good because it's clean, but it's also, you want a little bit of growth in there. You want that visibility between 18 and 24 inches is ideal. Anytime you start to get under 13, there's a lot of plants in the water, a lot of things that can, could be an indicator of a possible problem, just like the slide says. So if you see me out there, that's what I'm doing. I'm not just, taking a stroll out on the lake. Although me and Kevin did discuss it a couple times. Last slide. We're also doing a study with UT Tyler. Again, we got some tests we're doing. I got some samples out here on Holly Lake, right along the dock here. Not a dock, but the seawall. And then in 3 places over in Greenbrier, both inlets have samples, and then there's one at the dock. They got big chains on them. They look just like that right there. So if you see them, please leave them alone. We've had a couple of them come up missing, so we're trying to keep them safe so that when these guys look at this stuff, they can give us a good idea kind of what's happening in the lake. They started taking samples back in December. They came and picked up the first batch about a month ago, and I've been taking samples, and the professor that's overseeing the study for these students says we're just going to keep going indefinitely, and they'll just keep looking at stuff as they collect it, and if they see something that is concerning to them, toxin-wise or algae-wise, that can be dangerous, they're going to let us know as soon as they start to see it. So that's kind of the way ahead for us on the lakes. Happy to try and answer any questions that you have. All right, thank you.
So while Scott's been out playing on the lake, apparently, the slide, please. Our interest income. So this originated several months ago, and we had, if you remember last year, there were funds set aside for corporate compliance and then legal. And the agreement was made, any of those funds that were in excess were going to be basically put into savings for a different time in case one of those categories needed to be utilized. So we looked at it and said, that's $242,000. We need to better manage our passive income. How can we make this work for the residents of the association? So we started down that path. Jeff and I went down and talked to the folks at the bank. We started looking at everything from CDs to treasury bills to money markets to high yield savings accounts, you name it. And eventually settled on Origin offered us a 3% interest rate on 2 of our primary accounts. So when we sweep them over to those accounts through our ICS sweep, it goes into these accounts now, and that equates to about 3% interest. In contrast to what that was before was about 0.75%. And what we're anticipating that we'll see, and we'll get the solid numbers, that just happened earlier this month, but what we're anticipating is that's going to be several $1,000s more in passive growth income for the residents of the association just based on us going down and making your money work better for you. So when I talk about, the interest income increase, that's really what it is. And, I think it's probably going to be upwards of, 3 to 4, maybe even a little bit more, $1,000 per month in interest that we're now collecting. So I think that's a very positive thing and just goes towards our end state of trying to make your money work better for you. Next item is the whiskey's ownership. So I know that Suzanne and Nancy had put out basically an announcement that said that they had sold the restaurant, a variety of different things. I just want to be very clear, the restaurant is not theirs to sell. That belongs to the residents of the ranch. I think what they meant to say is that they were stepping away, that potentially they're going to sell the name to a new vendor, to a new third-party contractor, operator, but it has nothing to do with the sale of the restaurant. So Suzanne and Nancy notified us, and they exercised the clause in the contract that said they would like to step away. They're required to give us 60 days notice in order to be able to do that, which they did. Their last day will effectively be May 27th of this year. So close of business on May 27th, which is a Saturday. They will effectively no longer operate the restaurant. So where do we go from here? Amy Ducote, I don't know if most folks know her, but she has a keen interest in operating the restaurant. She's currently looking at a variety of different things, so is the board, trying to negotiate a contract that might be very similar to what Suzanne and Nancy enjoyed. That would, one, keep the restaurant up and running. It's an amenity for the residents, and one of the things I constantly hear is the restaurant costs us money. Well, every amenity on the ranch costs money, but I think it's important to note, like, how much money does the restaurant cost? So over the course of the last year, from a third-party operator standpoint, what did the residents of the ranch put into the restaurant? And it was about $84,600. So we're covering the building maintenance, we're covering some equipment repairs, insurance, utilities, telephone, things of that nature, about $84,600. So what happens today if we close the restaurant? What does it cost you at that point? Well, we still got to maintain utilities. We still have to maintain some insurance, a variety of things, but that would essentially take our monthly or our yearly balance down to $44,600. So in essence, you're saving $40,000 if you elected to close the restaurant, not have that amenity here. We have a very nice building and facility sitting empty, but it's the added convenience as well. So when you really look at it, it's a $40,000 investment, and I say investment because the expectation is that one of these days we're going to get a third-party contractor to the point where they're starting to pay some of the utilities. So you're not. They're starting potentially to pay some rent. So you're not covering the cost of those things. But we have to take this upfront approach to be able to get somebody in here to hopefully work towards that. So again, the contract is ending. I just want to be very clear, it's non-transferable, so this contract will essentially end and a new contract may potentially be signed. One other note on that, as we're talking about whiskeys, the 19th hole, I do want to just briefly announce that they're holding their board of election, or their board election on the 17th of May at 4 p.m. at Whiskey. So if you're interested in going to see how that group does that, they're going to be doing it at 4 p.m. on the 17th of May. Stokes, so the dam, Greenbrier Dam, Stokes and Associates. It's 2019, I believe, maybe a little bit before that. Stokes and Associates came on, and they're the ones that were contracted to look at the dam. So everything from the TCEQ standpoint of, is there a transfer of materials, all these other things. It also equates to our emergency spillway, which a lot of people refer to that little kind of parking lot down there. That's actually our emergency spillway, but there's an EAP associated with that, our emergency action plan. And that goes all the way downstream about 13.7 miles, and it creates this inundation flood zone. So in the event that we get one of those just catastrophic rains, those 100-year rains, and we get overflow substantially, how does that impact the downrange? And that goes into our overall assessment for the dam. What does that put us in a significant, a high risk, so on and so forth? Well, Stokes and Associates have been working on this for a while. There's some back and forth with TCEQ about their recommendations on how we fix the dam. And then they came out in October to look at some of the repairs that they'd already made. So that's when we took the lake down about a foot. And we went in, we inspected the inner conduit of the actual spillway itself, we inspected the splash pool, we did all of these things, and they generated a new report to send to TCEQ. They've since finished that report, but they were also supposed to have finished the EAP. They didn't, so called them in, we sat down, and essentially, I think we kind of got back on track. They report back once a week now with progress reports so that we can get this thing taken care of, we can push it forward, and we can do the things that we need to do to maintain good standing with TCEQ. So we're anticipating that next week we'll have the finalized EAP report. It's been problematic. They do 1D versus 2D. It's a different program that they do, and it has to do with the inundation model that they're going to see downrange. They were having a variety of errors. TCEQ won't accept it if it comes back with errors, so they essentially bought a new program, ran the model back through that program, through this 2D model, and now they have a clean run with no errors, and they can start to do all of the legwork that goes into it from that perspective. So I'm anticipating next week we will get our draft copy to be able to review, and then we can send that out to TCEQ. Have also been talking to TCEQ about, guys, we've got to get this thing back on track. Their recommendation and the recommendation of the engineers are just not coinciding. It's like railroad tracks, and you can't get them to ever cross. So we're trying to figure out how to get them to cross. I think we're probably going to end up going down and having a face-to-face with TCEQ. I've requested them to come up here. That's not working, so fine, we'll come to you. But we need to sit down and we need to figure this thing out. So that is our intent. That is our way forward with these things. I hope that we're going to make some notable progress on this in the very near future. But much like the USCG thing, I would like to finalize this thing and put it to bed so we can move on to other things. And that's all I have on those things. Thank you. Questions now or at the end? Sure.
Harvey Schroyer, Section 8. In reference to the restaurant, do they provide you a P&L statement or anything every month? Or what is the restaurant in there, from what they operate, are they operating at a profit or a loss?
So the current contract, they provide what we need for TABC. TABC tells us that they can't have more than 51 to 49% for liquor. So we also submit the liquor taxes on their behalf. We essentially charge them, but it has to come from the 19th hole. So what we see is their total liquor sales. The new contract would be a little bit different and would be structured in a manner so that we could see basically gross sales, gross alcohol sales, and then any taxable sales that are sent, reports that are sent to the state.
Okay, because right now, all they're paying basically is food and labor.
Correct.
And some incidental expenses.
They're
So pending, I don't see any P&L from them, so it's hard to tell what if they should be profitable if that's all that they're paying. But yeah, it depends on the sales that they have.
That's exactly right. And you also have to remember it's a very finite customer base. You know, if it were located on 2869 and we could take the money from everybody outside of the ranch, that would be great. But we're operating on a very small customer base. So I would suspect that they're probably profitable. Otherwise, they wouldn't have continued this long.
They're giving up their contract, so I'm not sure. I don't know too many restaurateurs that if they're profitable want to give it up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Adam, to that point, as they served us notice, did they point any one thing or anything in particular why they came in? Because they had a sweetheart of a deal. Come on. If you can't make money under those conditions and terms,
And I don't disagree with that. I think it was a very fair deal. You know, it's very similar to deals that have been done in the past with third-party contractors. But one of the things that they did note is they are the owners of the Barrel House up in Winsboro. If you've been up there, they have substantially expanded that place. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it. That's going to take a lot more of their time. But they're also residents out here now. When they initially signed the contract, they were not residents out here. And I think, you know, they kind of want to go up there and they want to be residents. They want to enjoy the amenities that this place has. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think it was probably a combination of those two things. Yes, sir.
Is there an option of closing the restaurant and just keeping it?
So the question Terry Haney in the back asked was is there a possibility of closing the restaurant but keeping the 19th hole open? I don't know that it's not an option, but I don't know that it would be profitable, to be quite honest. During the day, sure, you can use that small side, but things like trivia, which is a huge moneymaker for them, other large events, you're just going to quickly outgrow that small side. So from a... Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would ask, if it's being contracted out, does it matter to us? You know, if the input is the same essentially, and it's up to them for the output, does it matter if they operate half or full or?
Well, like they said, we've offered a sweetheart deal on
Yeah.
payment and payment for I mean, the experience is over. I mean, we need to do something else.
Adam, are we actively soliciting other restaurateurs for that, or approaching other golf organizations or HOAs that operate restaurants for some guidance, perhaps?
Not necessarily from a guidance perspective. Again, this is a 60-day. We didn't really know. I had no idea. I came in one morning and the email was there saying we'd like to terminate our contract. So we essentially had 60 days to figure out this scenario. Amy being familiar with it, it's a little bit more seamless of a transfer. So is it, you know, the ideal option? I don't know. Is it a bad option? I don't know that either, to be quite honest with you. But I feel reasonably sure that the contract that is signed still offers plenty of protection for the residents. It gives her every opportunity to succeed, which is ultimately, I think, what everybody here wants, is a successful restaurant that provides a quality service, quality food, and ideally can help recoup some of the money that goes into it. So that's the end game that we're after.
Do you have any idea what the sales are now currently?
I don't, no, sir.
The question is, the contract that we had with the original whiskeys, you know, of course, I don't want to step you out, and the agreement that we had with them, will Amy keep that same agreement, or was there an expiration date on that agreement that we had that we would pay this and this and this? Or is that gonna carry into Amy and keep on going for how long?
So two separate agreements. Their agreement will end. That agreement is non-transferable. That's clearly stated in the agreement itself. So that one, essentially on the 27th of May, that one's done. The new agreement, if an agreement is reached, would largely mimic that. You know, there might be some other small little things in it to, you know, ensure, I don't know, some mentorship and things like that to, again, foster success. I mean, I think that is the overarching thing that we're trying to accomplish here. We could close it down, but what good does that do for any resident, you know?
Are you saying that by mimicking it, it's gonna be very similar to what we have been doing already before? We're not making any money yet, so we're gonna mimic that and continue not to make any money yet, or close it, and then we make $40,000 a year.
No, we don't.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Let me throw something else at you. If we want to save money on amenities, we could close the pool. We wouldn't have to put water in it. We could close the golf course. We wouldn't have to, you know, do anything like that. We could do a variety of things. You know, I'm not trying to poke at you, Jerry. I'm not. But you know, I think a $40,000 investment into a service that is provided for the residents and exclusively the residents of this ranch is a fair investment, particularly when we look at going forward, if we could start to recoup some of those things. This is not an indefinite contract. The contract would end at the end of the year. And I think anybody in the restaurant industry would tell you, that, you know, the first 3 years, one, is a volatile industry, just period. It's just volatile. But for the course of the rest of the year, get your feet under you. You know, take some mentorship. You know, let's see if we can grow this thing. She's enthusiastic. You know, that says a lot. You know, so let's give her an honest shake at this and see if maybe next year, and if it's not working out, then the board reserves the right to not renew that contract. Yes, sir.
Right now, the restaurant industry is very volatile. I will share that on average, most restaurants are earning between 7 and 9%. Terrible return for the kind of money that
Absolutely.
Everybody's broke. Well, restaurants they cannot raise their prices to keep up with inflation because they'll drive away their customers. So they're caught in a rock and a hard place right now.
And food costs are skyrocketing.
Costs are skyrocketing, labor costs are out of sight.
Absolutely.
Utilities are up. So it's really hard for a restaurant to make a decent return on their investment.
Yes, sir. I agree.
One of the things that you pointed out is that it's a restricted restaurant because you have to.
Can you use the mic, sir? I'm sorry.
One of the things you pointed out is that it's a restricted restaurant because only people on the ranch can go to it. It's hard to be open to the public. if you look at other venues that operate the same way, and I'm going to give you, country clubs operate kind of in the same fashion. They all have a restaurant for the country clubs. Most country clubs have an assessment to the members. And I know you all don't want to hear the word assessment, not a good word, but they most country clubs have to have an assessment for the restaurant, otherwise they will not be able to succeed. So is that an option that you want? And when I say an assessment, that means everybody pays, let's say, $10 a month for the restaurant, but you get $10 credit that you can use at the restaurant. So we either say you either use it or lose it, but you would have the option. And that's how many golf clubs, country clubs, keep their restaurant alive, is by having this assessment.
Yes, sir. Certainly aware of that. I'll be honest, from my perspective, not speaking for the board, but from my perspective, the dirty A word that you said, I don't like to, I like to think that there's ways that we can work around everything before we have to figure out assessments and start charging folks that may or may not use the restaurant. So it's certainly an option, but I think, just in my opinion, it's kind of an option of last resort.
Well, we all pay the dues now, and there are some things in the dues
Yep.
that none of us use where it's owed. So
Yeah.
it's just part of
There's
being-
pros and cons, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I know, come up.
Greg, please keep your hands to yourself.
I tried, believe me.
This is a family environment, Greg.
It was an effort. Greg Demko, Section 4. Having talked to Amy, because of the relationship we have with the 19th Hole Club, there are things that have compounded over the last year. Things being that the restaurant's closed Sunday, Monday, and now Tuesday. How the heck do you expect to make any money? And she has, as you mentioned, an amazing ideas of things she wants to do, and I'm sure the board has already heard about a lot of them, but things that have not been going on up there that residents love. Why haven't we had Super Bowl events? Hockey, Stanley Cup's coming up.
Yeah, I agree.
All this stuff. I mean, how many times when these events go on, I know I've managed some for holidays, St. Patrick's Day, Halloween, whatever. You pack the place. And we've had managers in that restaurant, what do we had, like 16 in the last 18 years? A track record sucks. And yet, and I've talked to Amy about this, we have, the board, and there's so many things that have been successful over those years that fish fries, Friday night, pack the place. Why aren't we doing that? But those are all things, and I can tell you right now, that girl has a book of ideas of things that she'd like to see being done, and she is going to take it one step at a time, maybe opening different times, not closed for 3 days, maybe looking at Sundays for some things. That's going to be nothing but success. And I know everybody behind me here loves to get 10, 12, 15 people at a table at these functions. And that's what she's looking to do. So understand she's willing to put the time and some money into that. So get that contract done, because I think you've been for a surprise.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know her.
Can you?
Is her food gonna be any good?
Well,
Okay. She's currently the manager. I'm back, give me this restaurant of 20 years ago where I used to have a baseball steak and a steak machine. But, some decent food. I didn't for everything else. She's the ranch, needs a restaurant.
yeah.
That I
So,
We can't hear.
so she is.
Hey, guys, let's
So-
let her talk. If y'all are whispering around out there, hush for just a minute, please.
I can't believe you can't hear me. I have a loud voice. I said that we need a restaurant. You have to have a restaurant. It is a plus, I think, Forest, but you do need to do like Greg said. She needs to have the things, Sunday brunch, I think a large amount of people would really appreciate that. When the other restaurants around here are closed, her open. But the key is going to be quality of food.
I agree.
You know, that, and my question is if, will the contract show the right of refusal at the end of whatever if it is determined the quality doesn't meet up to what the people on the ranch want? You know, if we just have finger food, that's not what we want. You've got to have that mix.
Yes, ma'am.
We're not a bar.
Yes, ma'am. So the contract won't be, you know, you didn't provide the steak that I wanted, you're gone.
I understand that, but
I just want to set expectations. Yeah.
There's something known as, you might even try a little survey with the ranch people before that's up, see what the people say.
So I think you all make fantastic points, but as a third-party operator, the menu is dependent on Amy. And I think she's going to be receptive to these things. I do. I think she's got a lot of energy. She's got a lot of ambition. She wants to be a business owner. She wants to succeed. So I think you're going to see a lot of good things. I hope, because again, between the admin staff and the board, we are absolutely invested in seeing that place succeed. You know, so yes.
To address what was just said about the quality of.
I'm sorry.
Wait, we need mic.
So it's not just folks in here, but we're taping this, and it pipes through that so that folks on the playback can also hear you.
To address the quality of food and what she's going to serve, one suggestion might be that before you sign an agreement with her, you make her have a food presentation, that she has to prepare so many items, and then you get to review the items and see if you like them or what.
Yeah, I think largely she's probably going to move forward with what she's got now and then start introducing new things as she can. So she's the current manager up there, manages. Well, correct. Yeah, but I think she's kind of largely going to go with what she's got now and then move into this. No, most of our personnel, to my understanding, and I haven't had this conversation with her, but I think you're essentially just going to see a change in ownership from a contractual standpoint, but not necessarily a difference. You know, I've kind of thought it through, and we announce it. It's same great whiskeys, same great staff, just different owners. You know, so.
Hang on, just let me interrupt just a minute. Go ahead, do your question, and then we're going to stop the questions right now, and we'll do them at the end, okay? So we can move on through the rest of the agenda, please.
So I'll just piggyback. My name's Matt. I live in Section 5. I'm an executive chef for Lasso Ranch on Hawkins Lake. I hear all your guys' input, and it's all great input, and a lot of you guys are in tune with kind of restaurants and food costs and all that. I've spoke with Amy, who I think is passionate. She's energetic. She's got great ideas as well. I volunteered to help her cultivate, and I've cooked for some of you here on the ranch. Not all of you, but hopefully one day. But my family and I moved from San Francisco Bay Area, California in December of 21, where I've cooked for Pixar, executive producers of Hollywood films and large restaurants. So I do know good food, but I do know passionate people when I see them, and Amy is passionate. If there's anything I can do to help, my only question to piggyback on what you were just talking about is what's the due diligence process in vetting Amy as an operator of a restaurant? If she's essentially learning from whiskeys, or if she's getting mentorship from a restaurant that just not failed, but just backed out of a contract. It's kind of a underlying issue in my eyes as far as a restaurateur, you know, somebody who's looking to be successful.
Yep, and that's a great question. Maybe underlying, you say it's underlying, but I think it's probably the foremost thing that both the board and I ask. So part of the process was come up, not only just give us your sales pitch, give us your spiel, like what are you going to change, how are you going to operate this? But there was also a requirement for a business plan. Show us your business plan. Put some mental prowess to this and think through it. It's going to be arduous and it's going to be time consuming, but it's going to pay dividends in the end. We'd also like to see a financial pro forma. How do you think you're going to operate? Like, what are you shooting for? What are your goals, and what are you willing to do? Because sometimes those goals and reality just don't match up. But how are you going to adjust with those things? And she's provided that. I think she's got some great mentorship, not only with local folks. Sounds like great food mentorship as well. If you ever need a taste tester, I love to eat. But she's also got a 5-member board that she can come up to and talk through. And there's an intent, to be very active with that. And it's not from a, you're going to do this standpoint, but it's a, hey, let's think through this as a first-time business owner. There's a lot to think about. And let's work through some of those things so that it's not 3 months down the road and you're like, well, I wish I would have changed that a month ago. And some of that is just learning by experience. So let's reduce the learn by experience. Let's learn through mentorship and move forward. So that's the outcome or the intent.
There's a lot that she can do, and I'm sorry to piggyback on that question, but there's a lot that can happen from a kitchen standpoint in terms of efficiencies that can serve a population like this, but turn up the dial on the food quality and the menu selections.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Moving to the kayak launch. Stacy?
Good afternoon. Can y'all hear me?
No.
No. Okay, well. I know how to use that, but you can hear me with when I'm just talking? Oh. Sorry. Now you see why I don't walk down there and stand up in front of that thing. I can't operate an on and off switch. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the money allocated for the kayak launch. As many of you know, in the initial budget that we presented in November of 2022, we had allocated $16,000 for a new kayak launch on Lake Greenbrier. However, there were a couple of things that happened that we kind of lost the intended site for the kayak launch and the pressing need for the improvement for the gun range due to usability and, more importantly, safety. We reallocated the $16,000 from the kayak launch to the gun range. And this was voted on by the Board of Directors as Board Restricted Funds expenditures in the December 22 open meeting. After we got a lot of feedback and discussion, the board agreed to consider using the leftover funds from the gun range for a kayak launch on Lake Greenbrier if a location can be mutually agreed upon by the board administration and the kayak club. The gun range improvements have been completed. They came in at right at $8,000, just under $8,000. Therefore, the board has agreed to vote up to allocate up to $8,000 for the kayak launch, again, pending the ability to arrive upon a mutually agreed upon location. The total expenditures for board restricted funds for 2023 will not change and will remain at $711,000. So we're not increasing the board restricted funds spending, we're just reallocating money that was not spent.
All right, so that was current focus, or I'm sorry, still current focus. So board restricted fund outlook. I do want to touch just a little bit. We don't have the final numbers, but I think it's important to kind of touch on where we are right now, and Jeff mentioned a few of them. But just for our first quarter, bridge sandblasting, we're pretty close on budget on that. It's going to be below, but we're pretty close on that. Bathroom course repairs, under budget. I hope that you've noticed that our maintenance department is doing a lot more of the work around here. I think they're doing a great job. Jeff Griggs, our new maintenance manager, is doing a fantastic job. So we're saving some money on those things, contracting them out and doing them in, vice contracting them out, we're doing them in-house. With the equipment facility, we're at about 41.5 right now. We have just about met exactly what we said we were going to do. Just my personal philosophy, but I'm not of the opinion of we had $50,000, so let's spend $50,000. We said what we were going to do at 41.5. Let's be happy with that and save the money. Gun range, again, we came $8,000. Our maintenance department did all of that stuff. Aquatic plants, we're looking at about $14,000, so we're saving money all throughout there. And we look at second quarter, and the board is going to vote on this later today. Just as a reminder, they have already approved the holistic board restricted funds budget. But as is protocol, we go through and then re-vote on those for the expenditure of each quarter. So for this quarter, we've got facility renovation, $30,000. We had road paving. This is the contract.